We trusted them. That was our first mistake. We thought the Zalari were like us. Proud, honorable, loyal. We stood shoulder to shoulder in the first galactic war against the Veric. We bled for their colonies, died defending their starports. We even opened Earth's own vaults to fuel their fleets. And when the Veric turned their tide and came howling through the sector, who do you think left us to rot? The Zalari. Their ships pulled out of orbit mid-battle. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. We watched our skies light up with plasma and ash while their diplomats fed the galactic media some slick lie about our strategic repositioning. Yeah, right. Tell that to the screaming civilians we couldn't evacuate in time. Tell that to my squad vaporized on the surface of Nova 3 while waiting for air support that never came. They didn't just betray us. They abandoned us, sacrificed us to save their soft-skinned, silicon-fed civilization. And they thought we'd just take it. Not this time. It's been 5 years. We rebuilt in silence, in fury. The Earth Council went dark, off-grid. No comms, no broadcasts. The galaxy thought we'd gone extinct. Truth is, we were preparing. Every nation unified under one name, the Black Flag Pact. Not peacekeepers, not politicians, predators. We learned from every war, every betrayal. We studied their weaknesses, mapped their trade routes, intercepted their encrypted channels. We didn't just build ships. We built something more. Weapons that think, armor that adapts, soldiers forged in pain and programmed for vengeance. They didn't see us coming. Our first strike hit the Zari Moon outposts. No warnings, no speeches, just explosions that turned crystal domes into clouds of debris. Their command centers tried to call for backup. We jammed their systems, hacked their feeds, let them scream into the void. I was on the ground that day. Name's Grady Vaughn, former captain, now commander of the Harbinger Division. We don't wear ranks anymore, just scars and silence. I remember stepping onto that charred lunar base. The air was thin, red lights flashing through the smoke. One of their officers tried to surrender. Some polished Zalari noble half-draped in gold silk. He begged, said it was all a misunderstanding, said he had no idea Earth was betrayed. I looked him in the eye. You didn't need to know. I told him. You just needed to help. Then I pulled the trigger. That became our motto. No speeches, no second chances. Helped or didn't. Lived or died. The pact spread like a shadow. One by one, we're taking their colonies, their ships, their resources. We're not conquering. We're reclaiming. Every power cell we rip from their hands is one they stole from us. Every city we torch is a warning. We're not sorry. The galaxy now whispers about Earth like it's a ghost story. A species once noble, now savage. But they forget who made us this way. We were loyal. They made us monsters. And now we're coming for everything they've got. We hit the Zari Central Nexus on Cycle 143. A day burned into my bones. The Nexus wasn't just their capital. It was their pride. Their precious shining jewel floating above. Their home world like a monument to their superiority. It was a city-sized fortress cradled in orbit, layered with defense grids, shimmering with light, and guarded by fleets we used to help design. Yeah, Earth tech powered half their systems. Another insult. We knew their protocols. We wrote their damn encryption. The irony, they never updated it. Too proud, too arrogant. They thought we were gone. And ghosts don't hack satellites. So we slipped in through their blind spots. Dead zones we remembered from the war. Inside, we hijacked their network from the core outward. I led the breach squad, just 5 of us. No need for more. We weren't ordinary soldiers. The pact had changed us. We were engineered for this. We called ourselves the Gutted because whatever humanity we had before, it had been carved out to make space for this new purpose. I remember the moment we broke through the main vault doors, Zalari civilians running, guards panicking, alarms screaming in 12 dialects. Behind me, Corin, massive skin like iron, more beast than man, planted a sonic charge and blew the vault open like paper. Inside rows of plasma-stabilized currency, Zalari crowned data cores, trade agreements with over 60 worlds, wealth beyond reckoning. We torched it all. They didn't understand. This wasn't about money. This was about memory. I looked one of their diplomats in the eye as he crawled out from under rubble, glass cutting through his blue ceremonial robes. He wheezed something about peace, about mercy. Peace? I spat, dragging him up by the collar. Where was your peace when we begged for support at Hector 9? When we broadcasted distress from Cinderline for 12 hours straight, and you shut off your relays? He tried to speak, but I didn't let him. I jammed a data pad into his chest. The one that held a video feed from that day. Thousands of humans burning, choking, crushed under collapsed domes, calling for help that never came. Then I dropped him and let him crawl back into the ash. He lived. I made sure of it. Some scars aren't meant to bleed. They're meant to haunt. By cycle 1050, we controlled over 30 of their worlds. Not because we held territory. We didn't care about borders. We struck, stripped them bare, and vanished. They called us the Shadow Plague, said we were viruses, demons. The Galactic Council tried to step in. Fools. They sent envoys, mediators, half-human, half-synthetic diplomats trained to de-escalate aggression. We returned one of them in a pod, alive, unharmed, but stripped of all synthetics. We left a message carved into the hull in 7 languages. Do not speak peace to those you condemn to war. That's when they realized. We weren't negotiating. We weren't asking. We were taking. And then we found Project Virex. It was buried deep beneath the Zalari moon of Varnex, a planet they swore was uninhabited. Another lie. We cracked the moon open like an egg and found the labs. Hidden chambers, stasis pods, forbidden tech. We weren't the only ones they betrayed. Inside those pods, humans are people. Soldiers who'd gone missing during the First War. The Zalari hadn't just abandoned them. They'd taken them, used them, experimented. They spliced our DNA with Varix Bio, tried to create a hybrid soldier, thought they could perfect the human body, enhance it, dominate it. They failed, but not before destroying hundreds of lives in the process. We revived the few who could be saved. What they told us, it shattered whatever restraint we had left. My second-in-command, Dren, stood silent for hours after hearing the stories. He never was a talker, but something in him died that day. That night, we declared the Reckoning Protocol. No more mercy, no more propaganda. The Pact began extermination campaigns, surgical, precise. We targeted research facilities, gene labs, black site prisons, not just to destroy them, but to broadcast it. We wanted every Zari citizen to know this wasn't random. This was justice. And they responded. Oh, they screamed on every channel. They called us war criminals, terrorists, said we were genocidal. But here's the part they always leave out. We learned that from them. Every tactic, every weapon, every silent scream in the night. We didn't invent that. They did. We just perfected it. By the time we reached Zalari Prime, their home world, their fleets had crumbled. Their orbital defenses malfunctioned under our hacks. Their military leaders had either defected or killed themselves. I landed personally. No helmet, no mask. I wanted them to see my face, to remember it. The Zalari High Council was waiting, huddled in their marble chamber, too proud to run, too weak to fight. Their prime speaker, this withered creature draped in silk and shame, tried to offer a deal. Territory trade rights. Apologies. He started with Commander Vaughn. We regret. Stop, I said, cutting him off. I reached into my coat and tossed a blood-stained photograph onto the floor. It slid across the polished tile until it landed at his feet. The image was burned, cracked, almost faded. But you could still make out the 3 figures. My wife, my daughter, my son, smiling in front of a cratered home on Nova 3. They died waiting for a rescue that never came. The council went silent. "Regret doesn't fix bones," I said. "It doesn't unburn skin. It doesn't bring back the screams." I raised my weapon. Half the room flinched. "Your empire ends tonight," I told them. "You don't get to erase what you did. You don't get to crawl behind politics and say you're sorry." And then I walked away. I didn't have to pull the trigger. That honor went to the gutted. Every man and woman in that chamber was judged and executed by survivors of their betrayal. I watched from the outside, listening to their screams echo through the walls like music. We didn't just win. We rewrote the stars. The pact remains. Not as a government, not as rulers, as watchers, enforcers. Every time a species raises its head to whisper betrayal, we remind them we are the consequence. And Earth is no longer just a blue dot on some galactic chart. Earth is a warning, a memory that never fades, a shadow that never forgives. They didn't understand. We weren't fighting for closure. We were fighting to make sure no one ever forgot what happened when Earth was betrayed. So, we kept going. The pact moved like fire through dry brush, and we had no interest in diplomacy. The Zilari hadn't acted alone. There were others who stood by during our fall, who watched humanity suffer and chose silence. The Rusari Confederation, the Ulmor Union, the great bureaucratic giants of the galactic stage. Oh, they didn't drop bombs or launch invasions. No, they were cleaner, more polite. They just turned away, withdrew funding, blocked humanitarian aid, froze our accounts while we buried millions. That made them guilty. It didn't. We hit their floating city of Orusk with precision plasma strikes, timed to collapse the outer shields and shut down life support. Not instantly. No. We wanted them to feel it. The gasps, the cold, the realization that their so-called clean hands were covered in our blood. We didn't take their resources. We left them to rot in the heavens. Next were the Ulmor. They were worse. They claimed, they'd offered to help us after the betrayal, that they'd sent relief ships and supplies. They lied. We had records, ships full of food and medicine, rerouted away from human colonies and accidentally redirected to Zilari-controlled systems. Stolen. We found human refugees on Ulmor prison ships, detained for security concerns, children, elderly survivors. We liberated them. Then we returned the favor. The Ulmor capital city of Berlin was a fortress buried in the ice caverns of their tundra world, guarded by mech towers and ion cannons. It took us 3 weeks, not because it was hard, because we wanted to enjoy it. I led that mission too. My team and I breached the southern gate after their elite guards fell. We didn't kill civilians. That was never our way. But the Ulmor elite, their military leaders, their puppet masters, they weren't civilians. They were architects of abandonment. I remember standing in their central hall, flames licking up the crystal walls, their once proud generals kneeling in the ash. One of them, tall and bone-thin, looked up at me with hollow eyes. "We did what we thought was right," he said. I laughed. "You stood by and watched us die." He didn't reply. "Next time," I added, pressing my weapon to his chest. "Do the wrong thing. At least then you'll bleed for it." We didn't just win battles. We rewrote alliances. For centuries, Earth was seen as primitive, emotional, impulsive, fragile. But now species that once mocked us began to bend the knee. Not because they believed in our cause, because they were afraid. That suited us fine. The Black Flag Pact became a myth, a curse. Mercenaries swore never to take contracts against Earth. Pirate fleets refused to raid human freighters. Even the Veric, our old enemies, offered us peace, and we accepted it. Strange, isn't it? The monsters we fought were the ones who never betrayed us. The Veric fought us with honor. Brutal but honest. No lies, no backstabbing, just war. I respected that. They sent an emissary. A war breed armored in flesh steel knelt before me at the ruins of Arusk and offered their ancient blade a sign of truce. "You," he said, voice deep and crackling. are what we always feared humans would become. I took the blade. And you, I replied, are what we became because no one else feared us. That sealed it. An alliance between Earth and the Veriks, unthinkable a decade ago, now forged in mutual hatred for the same cowards. But even as we carved our names into the stars, I couldn't escape the ghosts. At night, in the silence of my quarters aboard the warship Vigil, I'd watch old footage, memories burned into data chips before Nova 3 fell. My daughter laughing in the snow, my wife teasing me about my beard, my son asking if I'd be home in time for his birthday. They never made it to the shelter. They trusted the system. They died believing someone would come. Sometimes I wonder if they'd even recognize me now. If they'd understand what I became, or if they'd be horrified. Corin once told me, "You ain't the man who lost his family. You're the man who made the galaxy pay for it." Maybe that's true. Maybe that's all I've become. But I don't regret a second. Every world we take, every leader we expose, every system we break, it brings us closer to balance, to justice, to memory. There was one last name on the list. The Tur Dominion, the ones who whispered in the Zari's ears, the ones who funded their withdrawal and called it strategy. They stayed hidden behind corporate networks and legal walls, claiming they were just investors. Turns out they were the ones who advised the Zalari to pull out of Nova 3 in the first place. They ran everything from the shadows, the war, the betrayal, even the propaganda afterward. Their CEO, an ancient figure known only as the Spine, had never shown his face, but we found him buried deep within a space fortress orbiting a dying star. He thought he was safe. He wasn't. We boarded with a crew of 6. Only 2 of us walked out. We lost Dren in the breach, took a plasma bolt straight to the chest. Vaporized instantly. I carried his tags with me. Inside the Spine was exactly what I expected. A grotesque hybrid of machine and flesh, suspended in a chamber of wires, surrounded by blinking monitors. "You've come to kill me," he said, voice emotionless. "No," I replied. "I came to remind you. I played the footage. Every atrocity, every human scream, every betrayal. I made him watch it all, pixel by pixel. He didn't blink. You think vengeance makes you righteous," he said. "No," I replied. "It just makes us real." Then I left him alive, stripped his systems, sent his coordinates to every vengeful species in the quadrant. Let them decide his fate. Last I heard, the Verik tore his chamber apart. We didn't have to swing the final blow. We just opened the door. By the end of it all, the stars were different. Maps were redrawn, history rewritten, and Earth. Earth was no longer a planet of diplomats and dreamers. We were executioners. And if anyone ever dared to forget what they did to us, we'd be there in the silence between transmissions. In the shadows behind negotiations, in the nightmares of those who once turned away. We are Earth. We remember everything and we take everything they have. It was strange the quiet that followed. We had dismantled empires, reduced governments to whispers. Our enemies no longer gathered fleets. They gathered lawyers, tried to buy their way out of the reckoning. The Pact didn't respond to diplomacy. We didn't negotiate with hands that once held daggers. The galaxy finally understood. There were no second chances with Earth. But inside the silence, something else started to grow. A different kind of enemy. One without flags or ships. One that lived in the same dark place we had crawled from. Guilt. You see, vengeance is a flame. At first it warms you, keeps you alive when everything else is cold. But the longer you burn, the less you feel. Until eventually you forget what it was ever like not to be on fire. And the Pact had been burning for a long time. I started noticing it first in the rookies, fresh blood survivors from colony raids or children rescued from camps. They were angry, sharp, efficient, but some of them didn't sleep, didn't eat, unless ordered. They'd stare too long at scorched fields after a raid. and I'd see it in their eyes. A question. What happens after? We never had an answer. We weren't building anything, just destroying, retaliating, one mission at a time. That worked when the enemy was clear. But the lines had blurred. There was this boy, Cray, only 17, grew up watching the Pact take back human dignity one world at a time. He begged to join Harbinger Division, said he wanted to see the galaxy fear Earth. I told him the truth. You won't be seeing anything worth remembering. He didn't care. He was good too. Deadly with a rail rifle, calm under pressure, fast on his feet. But after a mission on Delos Prime, I found him in the aftermath, sitting alone next to a wrecked market square. Not crying, just still. There were bodies around, non-combatants, collateral damage. "What's bothering you?" I asked. He didn't look up, just said. They screamed like we did. That line stayed with me because he was right. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped hearing the screams, stopped telling the difference between the guilty and the unlucky. And I couldn't tell Cray that it was okay, that they deserved it because I didn't believe it anymore. The next few missions, I started asking more questions. We intercepted a Rasari convoy rumored to be supplying anti-Pact weapons. The intelligence was shaky, unconfirmed, but we were ordered to hit them anyway, and we did. Turned out they weren't carrying weapons. They were carrying refugees, civilians fleeing the last ruins of the war, trying to escape the spreading purge. The Pact silenced the report, called it a necessary mistake. That's when I knew we'd crossed a line. Somewhere, somehow, we became the thing we swore we were punishing. But it wasn't like we could stop. You don't just put a gun down after it's become part of your spine. So I kept going, kept obeying. But I started watching, tracking. Not our enemies, our own leaders. Commandant Revik, the man who replaced the Council after the Reckoning Protocol. He wasn't like us. He hadn't lost family on Nova 3. He hadn't watched comrades rot in abandoned trenches. He came from money, old Earth power. The kind of man who uses fire as a tool, not a wound. He wasn't in it for justice. He was in it for control. I confronted him once in the middle of a war room briefing, laid out the facts, missions without intel, civilian casualties, silence on our own internal war crimes. He didn't blink. "Do you want them to forget what they did to us, Vaughn?" he asked me. "No," I said, "but I don't want us to forget what we are." His answer: "We're the monsters they made. Let them lie in the bed they built." After that, I was marked subtly at first, reassigned to outer ring patrols, missions with half the support we needed, communications that mysteriously dropped in the field. One time, my entire squad's atmospheric seals were tampered with. If Corrin hadn't double-cheed the suits, we'd be drifting in the void right now. The Pact didn't kill me outright. They knew better. Make a martyr of Vaughn and you risk the older divisions rising up. No, they wanted to make me irrelevant, slow, forgotten. But I didn't vanish. I went underground, used old channels, survivors from the early days, people who still remembered what the Pact was meant to be. We started calling ourselves the Cinder Circle, the last spark of fire that remembered its original purpose. We weren't trying to overthrow the Pact. We were trying to clean it. We began exposing internal corruption, mission logs, intercepted orders, death counts, leaking them across the black net, letting the galaxy see that Earth wasn't the clean blade they feared. We were rusted, cracking, and we needed to choose, become tyrants or become human again. But it was a dangerous game. One night, while docked at a hidden moon base near Loris, I found a data spike in my bunk, a sleek, silent device used by internal execution teams. Not a weapon, a message. "We see you. They didn't kill me. Not yet, because I still had value. But that wouldn't last forever. So I made a decision. The only way to fix this wasn't to fight from the shadows. It was to take the fire right back to the heart of the Pact itself. I called in every favor, every old comrade who still had loyalty to the truth. Some said no. Some didn't reply. But some were waiting for this. We're going back to Earth, back to the core vaults, back to where the pact began. And if I have to burn every last corrupted leader to give us back the soul we lost, then so be it. Because vengeance without restraint becomes tyranny. And we didn't crawl out of Nova 3 just to become what killed us. We are Earth. We do not forget. And now we remember who we are. Getting back to Earth wasn't easy. The planet was no longer the open blue cradle we remembered from our childhoods. It had become a fortress, orbiting gun satellites, AI-controlled traffic gates, and multiple layers of clearance protocols. Even breathing in the atmosphere legally required biometric ID. They said it was for security. But we all knew the truth. Earth was the Pact's crown, and they weren't about to let anyone close who could tarnish its shine. We didn't go through the gates. We went beneath them. Corin knew a back door, a long-forgotten mining relay hidden beneath the crust of Mars's third moon. It was how the earliest Black Flag operatives moved between the inner planets without alerting the galaxy. We cracked open that tunnel like grave robbers disturbing a sealed tomb. The air stank of stale oxygen and rot, but it got us close. We slipped onto Earth under ghost protocols, silent and untraceable. No official landing, no broadcast, just the cold hum of stolen stealth rigs and the pressure of what we were about to do. There were only 9 of us left now. The rest had fallen, disappeared, or turned. I won't name them all. Not out of disrespect, out of protection. Even now, I know some of them have family left in the outer rings. If the Pact finds out they helped me, their bloodline won't last the week. We landed in what used to be called New Lisbon. The entire city had been rebuilt after the Varix invasion. Slick towers, neon veins of light, floating trams that whispered silently through the night. But there were no people. The streets were empty. Surveillance drones tracked every breath. Curfews were enforced by synthetic enforcers, their black chrome bodies indistinguishable from the shadows. This wasn't Earth. This was a laboratory. Ravik had turned the birthplace of humanity into a showroom, a perfectly polished example of what order through fear could accomplish. We moved fast, hopping rooftops, cutting through sewers, avoiding every scanner we could. The target was buried in the mountains outside the old Cascadian region, a fortress vault called Ashold. It wasn't just where the Pact stored its secrets. It was where they buried their betrayals. Deep beneath its reinforced layers were the mission logs, body counts, audio files, and confidential war records that could break the spine of the current regime. It was never supposed to be accessed, not even by command. But we had a code, a 6-word phrase whispered to me by a dying Varic emissary after we helped them. Destroy the Terrell network, burn the roots to heal Earth. We keyed it into the sub-terminal beneath a hydro pump station a mile outside Ashold's walls. The ground shook, doors opened. For a second I thought we'd made it, but they were waiting. It wasn't a firestorm. It wasn't even soldiers. It was her. Commander Lynn Inaris, my former protege, the last person I ever trusted. She stepped out from the vault corridor like a ghost, wearing the mark of the Pact on her shoulder, a coiled, black flag stitched in red. "Grady," she said. Her voice hadn't changed. "You shouldn't be here," she added. I stepped forward. "Neither should you." She looked tired, not just from the fight, from the weight of pretending she wasn't dying inside every day. "You think you're going to fix this?" she said with files, with truth. "It won't matter. The galaxy doesn't want truth. It wants peace at any cost." I didn't argue. I just said, "Then let them hear what peace really costs." She pulled a pistol, didn't aim it, just held it like it might make her decision easier. "I begged them not to turn Ashold into a lie," she whispered. But I couldn't stop it. "You don't stop the flood, you drown." "You swim," I said, "even if it kills you." The standoff lasted a full minute. Then she lowered the pistol and stepped aside. That was the moment I knew not all of us were gone. Not all the loyalty was dead. We entered the vault. Rows upon rows of cryo-sealed black data boxes humming, with ancient whispers. Each one marked with a code, a planet, a name. We cracked open the first 5, downloaded everything. The raid on Cinderline that never happened. It happened with packed soldiers dressed as pirates. The destruction of old Varick medical stations fabricated. We bombed them to steal genetic code. The files were bombs, but the last box, that one nearly broke me. No betray. I had always believed we were abandoned because of a tactical failure, panic, self-preservation. But the file told another story. The Pact, or what would become the Pact, had cut a deal. Pull out of Nova 3 in exchange for a full Zalari strategic database. It wasn't a betrayal in chaos. It was a transaction. My family didn't die because of war. They died because Earth wanted leverage. I dropped the box. My hands were shaking. Corin picked it up and said nothing. He didn't have to. We knew what had to happen next. We transmitted the files, not through Blacknet, not through pirate channels. We hijacked the central broadcast line, the one used by Revik himself to address the galaxy during the official day of the Pact. Millions were watching. We gave them a show. We played the recordings, showed the logs, exposed the internal orders, and when it was all done, I appeared on the screen myself, face worn, eyes unblinking. I said 4 words. We remember the silence, and then we cut the feed. Earth erupted. Not in fire. In truth, the people didn't riot. They questioned. They doubted. And for the first time since the Reckoning Protocol, someone whispered that maybe the black flag had been drenched in too much red. Revik responded immediately, declared martial law, declared me and my crew enemies of unity. He tried to shut the flood, but it was too late. Truth doesn't vanish. It rots in silence. And when you finally crack the shell, it spreads. We vanished again. Not into defeat, into strategy. Because now the galaxy didn't just fear Earth, it distrusted it. And from that crack, we would burn it clean. The day after we leaked the assholed files, the stars changed. Not physically. The sky still glittered with silent beauty, but the way people looked up at them, that changed. For the first time in years, Earth wasn't the unshakable center of power. We weren't the vengeful gods who had risen from betrayal and bathed the galaxy in justified fire. We were liars, opportunists, monsters with broken hearts. That hurt more than I expected because even after everything, I still wanted to believe that what we did had meant something. That the pain, the violence, the vengeance, it had a place. That it wasn't just rage wrapped in a flag. Now it all looked like theater. Even the survivors, even those who bled with us, started asking questions. What really happened on Nova 3? Why did the Pact kill its own to secure power? What else had we lied about? The Pact didn't sit quietly. It roared back with every tool it had. Rake appeared on every hollow screen across controlled space, calm and calculated as ever, his face sharpened by artificial enhancement and prescripted sincerity. The recent attack on Earth's core data systems, he began, was not an act of truth. It was an act of terrorism. He called us traitors, claimed the data was, fabricated, claimed I was mentally unstable, a soldier whose grief had become delusion. He wasn't trying to convince everyone. Just enough. And for a time it worked. Some colonies fell back in line. Smaller systems cut ties with us. Even a few old allies started locking their ports, afraid of being caught in what the media now called the Second Divide. But he made one mistake. He underestimated how far we'd already reached. The Cinder Circle wasn't just my crew anymore. It had spread quietly, patiently through field units, medical teams, communications officers, even within the council ranks. We'd been planting roots for years, long before Ashold. Revik hadn't noticed because he didn't believe we had the patience to build. He only knew how to burn, So while he screamed on screens, we acted in shadows. We sabotaged communications relays across the core belt, turned his carefully managed propaganda feeds into static. We rerouted transport fleets and turned supply lines into ghost routes. We even hijacked an entire shipyard's AI and forced it to produce zero-weapon humanitarian cruisers. No more warships for at least 2 cycles. Then came the coup attempt. Not by us, by his own. Someone tipped him off. The hub went dark. Merrick was captured. And then came the message that nearly broke me. They executed him on live broadcast. Not cleanly, not quickly. They made it slow to send a message. Rivik was done playing hero. Now he was letting the world see exactly who he had always been. Corin and I watched the execution from an abandoned observatory on the edge of Europa's mining district. We said nothing. Afterwards, Corin looked at me jaw tight. "You ready to kill him yet?" he asked. "I was ready 10 years ago," I said. But it wasn't that simple. Rivik didn't travel without a H-100 Red Guards. All of them brain-chipped and loyalty-locked. His ships were black-coated. His fortress embedded in a crater with anti-personnel shielding. And killing him wouldn't be enough. We needed something bigger. We needed a symbol, something that would show every world watching that the Black Flag Pact was not invincible. That Earth had bled itself dry chasing vengeance. That humanity still had a soul buried beneath the armor and flame. So, we planned something no one would expect. A trial, not a bombing, not a raid, a public formal trial. We'd capture Rivik alive and drag him into the light, and we wouldn't kill him. We'd prove him guilty. Let the galaxy watch him crumble under the weight of the lies he built. It was insane. Every military strategist called it suicide. Every ally thought it was a trap. But we weren't doing this to win a war anymore. We were doing this to end one. We launched the mission on Cycle 1203. The Cinder Circle infiltrated Rivik's convoy, en route to a Unity summit on the reclaimed world of Denvier 5. Only this summit didn't exist. It was a security stunt, a quiet meeting of loyalist governors and military heads where they could restructure after the backlash. We replaced the escort ships with our own. We hacked the atmosphere seals on his private vessel, and we lured him into stepping onto a secure bridge that led directly into our containment rig. It worked too well. We had Reeve bound, sedated, and transported to a hidden station above the old mining ring near Saturn. We broadcast the announcement galaxy-wide. Rivik will stand trial for crimes against humanity, against the galaxy, against truth. That shook the stars. Some systems called it justice, some called it blasphemy, but no one could look away. The trial is still a blur in my memory. I sat on the tribunal beside 2 Varick judges and 1 ex-pacted official who had defected during the leak. The crowd was digital, hundreds of millions watching from all corners of charted space. We played the files again. We confronted Rivik with his own voice, his own orders. He never denied them. He didn't need to. He smiled the whole time. "You think killing me changes anything?" he said on the second day. "You think dragging me in front of a camera redeems the things you've done?" "I don't want redemption," I said. "I want the next generation to know the difference between vengeance and justice. You really think they'll care? Not now. Maybe not for years. But one day, someone's going to stand where I stood and they'll have a choice. And maybe, just maybe, they won't choose fire." That silenced him. On the 4th day, we passed judgment. Rivik was guilty on every count. We didn't execute him. We exiled him to an old Varick's penal world, unshielded, isolated, crawling with the same people he once condemned. We left him there without guards, without comfort, just his name and a memory. That was more punishment than death ever could be. And Earth began to breathe again. The black flag still flies, but not as a mark of rage. Now it's a warning, not just to others, but to ourselves. To remember where we came from, what we became, and how close we came to losing everything that made us human. The trial ended, but nothing felt finished. Revik was gone, swallowed by the world he helped poison. The files had been exposed, and the mask of the pact had been stripped clean. But what lay beneath wasn't a revolution. It was rot. Systems that once pledged allegiance to Earth went silent. Some disconnected entirely, others fractured internally. Warlords claiming territory. Old governments clawing back power, colonies scrambling to build defenses of their own. We hadn't just toppled a regime. We'd cracked the foundation of an empire, and now every piece was falling where it pleased. I didn't blame them. For decades, Earth had positioned itself as the galactic enforcer, the wounded titan who rose from betrayal with righteous fury. Everyone bent the knee, not because they loved us, but because they feared we'd do to them what we did to the Zalari. Now that fear was gone, and in its place, chaos. The Cinder Circle spent weeks in orbit above the Saturn station, debating what came next. Some wanted to disappear, let history do what it always does, forget. Others wanted to seize the moment, build a new order, something purer than the pact. But we were soldiers, not architects. I spent most of those days staring out the observation deck at the curve of Saturn's rings, thinking not about politics, about my kids, about Nova 3, about how I spent half my life chasing fire and fury, only to reach the summit and find nothing but ash. Corin joined me one evening, holding 2 battered tin mugs of synth coffee. He dropped one beside me without saying a word and leaned against the bulkhead. "You see what they're saying on the feeds?" he asked. I didn't look. "Depends who they is." "Zalari government in exile offered amnesty," he said. "They're asking for a meeting." I laughed dry and bitter. "Didn't they broadcast my execution orders just 4 cycles ago?" "Yeah," he said. "But the galaxy's got a short memory when it comes to power shifts." I sipped the coffee. "I don't want diplomacy." "You're going to get it," he replied. "People are scared. You tore down the devil, but you didn't give him a god." That line stuck with me. We'd spent so long. Destroying, we never considered what should come next. Maybe we were too angry, too broken. Maybe we thought the absence of tyranny would naturally birth freedom. But freedom isn't born, it's built. And we hadn't built anything. Not yet. So I met with the Zalari. Not in a chamber or on a platform, but in the rubble of Ashold, the place where their betrayal was buried and where the truth had risen from. Their delegation was small. 3 ex-ministers, none of them in uniform, none of them smiling. They didn't offer apologies. They offered options. "We want to stabilize the sector," one of them said. "The war left every trade lane vulnerable. The Moor are arming again. The Varric are still holding the outer rim." I didn't reply. Another added, "You have influence. Respect, if not admiration. We need to rebuild, Commander Vaughn." I shook my head. "I'm not a commander anymore." She tilted her head. "Then what are you?" And I told her the truth. "I'm the man who made the galaxy fear Earth again. And I'm the one who's going to teach them why they should have feared silence more." They didn't understand that, but I didn't expect them to. What I did expect and what I demanded was full restoration for every colony left to die. Reparations, names of everyone involved in the Nova 3 betrayal, amnesty for survivors wrongly labeled insurgents, a full release of all internal logs from every nation involved in the first betrayal war. They agreed, not because they wanted to, because they had no choice. We were no longer allies or enemies. We were a mirror, and they were tired of seeing their own face covered in blood. From there, we moved fast. The pact was formally dissolved within 3 cycles. Earth's military was decentralized. Every ship, every AI system, every Black Flag division disbanded or repurposed under a new council of systems, human and non-human both. The Varric held 2 seats, the Rasari took 1. And Earth took 1. Just 1. It felt right. We weren't there to dominate anymore. We were there to remember. I never expected peace to feel this strange. After years of fire, stillness felt unnatural. I woke up without alarms, walked corridors that didn't hum with war engines. I saw children again, not crying in shelters, but laughing in real air, chasing hoverballs in gravity fields rebuilt from old war zones. The galaxy was healing, but healing doesn't mean forgetting. One night, I stood on the edge of the Nova 3 Memorial, overlooking the rebuilt colony zone. It wasn't a city yet, just a small outpost, a garden, a wall of names. My wife's name was there. So were my children's, etched into steel, untouched by time. Corin stood beside me. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Just silence, the kind we'd always feared. But this time, this silence didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like rest. We'd taken everything they had, not just their systems, their power, their pride. We'd taken back our story, our truth. And now, finally, we could begin writing a new one not born in blood, but carved in memory. It's strange how peace feels like a question more than an answer. For years all we wanted was justice. We fought, burned, bled for it. We made the stars remember our pain, made the traitors tremble when they saw the black mark of Earth on their charts. But now that the fighting was over, I realized something I never let myself admit during the war. I didn't know how to live without enemies. I walked through New Earth Settlement 9, one of the newest cities built on the bones of a former Pact fortress, now transformed into a hub of diplomacy and trade. Children were everywhere, not just human. Varric hatchlings, Rossari Lightorn, even a few Olor splicings, a generation raised without guilt, without fear. They didn't know betrayal, didn't know what it meant to watch your world burn while your so-called allies turned their backs. And they never would. That was the point. He asked me to help once, said the kids needed stories from the field. I told him no, not because I didn't want to teach them, but because I didn't want them learning my way. I wasn't proud of everything we did. I told myself it was necessary, and maybe it was. But necessity doesn't mean clean. We drowned the galaxy in vengeance. And when the tide pulled back, we saw everything that had been left beneath the surface. The mistakes, the lines crossed, the lives broken in pursuit of something that could never truly be repaid. The Black Flag was never about politics. It wasn't about governance. It was grief, weaponized and unleashed. And now grief had nowhere left to go. So I stayed on Nova. 3. Rebuilding wasn't my skill, but memory was. The council offered me a seat, some ceremonial title. I refused it. I didn't want power anymore. I didn't want to shape the future. I just wanted to guard the past. I started writing, not speeches, not history books, letters to the dead. Every night I'd sit on the edge of the rebuilt terrace and write one page at a time to my wife, my kids, to the soldiers we lost, to Dren, to Merrick, to the ones who went missing, and the ones who never came home even when they lived. I kept the pages sealed, never read them twice, just stacked them in a box. Maybe someday someone will find them and read the truth, not from reports, but from the heart of a man who stood in fire and somehow came out the other side without burning to dust. One night, I got a message from Lynn Anaris. I hadn't spoken to her since the trial. After she let me into Ashold, she disappeared, exiled herself to one of the remote outer moons, said she wanted silence. She sent only 3 lines. "They're naming the Unity Plaza after you. You should come." I didn't answer, but I went. The ceremony was quiet. No fanfare, just a gathering of the new council and a crowd of people from 100 different species. I stood in the back, no uniform, no speech. And when they unveiled the statue, a crude metal silhouette of a man holding a torn flag, I didn't see myself. I saw all of us, the broken, the betrayed, the ones who chose to rise instead of kneel. After the event, Lynn found me on the outskirts under the glow of twin moons. "You did it," she said. I shook my head. "We did it, and not all of it, right?" She didn't argue. "There's a weight that comes with being the one who remembers," she said. "Most of them won't understand what was lost to build this." "I don't want them to," I replied. She nodded. "So what now?" I looked at the plaza, at the kids playing near the monument, at the diplomats shaking hands, at the broken galaxy learning how to rebuild, one crack at a time. "Now," I said, "now we make damn sure it doesn't happen again." And that was it. That was the end of our war, not with a bang, but with memory. The stars are quieter these days. The transmissions are full of trade deals and colony births, not death reports. The warships sit in dry dock, rusting into relics. People wear flags again, not of domination, but of identity, of pride. And Earth is no longer feared. It's respected. Maybe that's what we should have wanted from the start. I still wake up some nights with the screams in my ears. I still feel the heat of Nova 3. I still see Revek's smirk in the dark corners of my mind. Some wounds don't close, but they don't bleed anymore. We didn't get revenge. We got reckoning. And in the ashes of all they took from us, we found something no enemy could ever steal again. Ourselves. We are Earth. We remember. And now, finally, we live. They buried me quietly. Not in a casket. Not in the, ground. I wasn't dead. Not officially. But the world had moved on. And I was no longer part of it. The galaxy didn't need men like me anymore. And maybe that was the greatest victory we ever earned. I live now on the outer edge of a terraformed planet once called Greylight 3. It's peaceful here. 2 suns, light wind, small community, no politics, no war councils, just soil, silence, and a sky that forgives you for looking up. They gave me land, not as a reward, but as a courtesy. No fanfare. Just a transport pod with coordinates and a simple message from the council for service rendered. I didn't ask for more, didn't want more. Some days I plant, other days I walk. Sometimes I just sit on the porch with a worn-out old pistol on the table beside me. Not because I expect trouble, but because part of me doesn't know how to feel safe without steel nearby. Old habits don't die, they sleep. Corin visits once in a while, still carrying that same jagged laugh. He's part of a veterans group now, helping others find peace. He told me the Varric are offering amnesty programs. A few Zari colonies are even naming schools after human commanders. Funny, isn't it? The same name they feared for years is now being scribbled by children on the walls of education halls. We talk less about the war these days. Not because we've forgotten, because we've said all there is to say. I keep the box of letters beside my bed. It's grown heavier over time, hundreds of pages now. I've never opened it. I don't need to. The memories are branded into me. My daughter's laugh, my wife's hands, my son's questions. Their absence is louder than any battle cry ever was. But that pain, it's no longer a blade. It's a scar. And scars don't ache the same way. They remind you that you lived. Sometimes I get messages from historians, young researchers digging through Black Flag records trying to make sense of what we were, what we became. Most want permission to quote me. I tell them no, because you can't quote fire. You can only survive it. Still, one message came through from a young girl named Ka, 13, studying galactic history on a Varicalid settlement. She found my name in a file, said her teacher called me a complex symbol. She asked a single question. Were you ever afraid? I didn't answer right away. Took me weeks, but eventually I wrote back. I told her the truth. Every day, every damn day. Afraid we'd fail. Afraid we'd go too far. Afraid that when the dust finally settled, we'd look in the mirror and see the enemy staring back. But we never stopped. Because sometimes fear isn't a wall. It's a compass. If you're not afraid of what you're becoming, you're already too far gone. I told her to stay afraid but never paralyzed, to remember that silence is more dangerous than conflict, that peace without truth is just waiting for betrayal to grow legs. She wrote back, said she wanted to become a diplomat, not to make people love each other, but to make sure no one ever forgets what happens when they stop listening. Smart girl. The world's in good hands. As for me, I'm not a hero. Never was. I'm just a man who lost everything and refused to stay quiet. A man who carried a flame long enough to make others remember the fire. One day, long after I'm gone, someone will stand on the same soil we fought for, and they'll read about us in a book. Maybe they'll shake their head. Maybe they'll cry. Maybe they'll wonder how we ever let things get so far. And maybe they'll whisper a promise that it won't happen again. And maybe, just maybe, they'll keep